Hello. Going to allow some time for folks to join us. This is a Q&A. I even brought my glasses so Tamara and I can answer questions. We didn't get to do this last week, so we wanted to make sure we answered some questions. A bunch of parents have submitted some questions ahead of time. First and foremost, let me make sure I introduce uh, Tamara Seaman. And you all know Tamara, mental development, mental performance coach from Georgia. And, one of the things that a lot of parents, when I talk to them, I want to reiterate we're both parents. My children are older. Tamara's children are in high school, daughters preparing for college opportunities. And we thought tonight might be a great night because it's the first day of October, and a lot of parents are in the midst of trying to find colleges, very much like you, Tamara. And so I thought you and I would take some time and deal with the anguish and the stress that both the athletes or the students and obviously parents have with regard to this topic. But first and foremost, happy October.
Yes, sir. Happy October 1st.
And you were just telling me that you visited our great state of Boston, Massachusetts, for college potential opportunities. And I get a chuckle because I lived in Louisiana for 6 years, and people would always say to me, "Does it get cold in Connecticut? Does it get cold in Massachusetts?" And sure as heck, you had two children that's one of the first things they thought, like, holy heck, this is cold up here. What was it, 60 degrees or 70?
It was, the wind hits differently because you're by the water. We don't have much water down here. Okay. I shouldn't make light of that with the storm, but so I think they were anticipating, like, okay, this is cold in September. It's blustery, and I couldn't hang here, day in and day out.
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't want to spend a spring day here like in March or April when it's 45 and windy and raw. So welcome to my world. But
yeah, but I grew up in the Northeast, so it's just interesting, like, what you get used to. And it was an adjustment for me to go from New Jersey down to North Carolina. A great adjustment. We still had seasons, but I think it's abrupt to go from the Southeast to a harsh Boston.
Yeah. Every once in a while, whether it's Ken or I, will be out and we catch ourselves, with the dialect, by the car, by the water, that kind of stuff. But, the big thing about this time of year, you're living this experience, and I talk to a lot of parents from Texas, West Coast, Canada, and everybody's trying to play musical chairs with regard to the college experience. So parents, student athletes, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the box, send them along to Twitter. I brought my spectacles. I'll be able to read your questions, and, I'll let Tamara answer most of the questions. But I think our Tuesdays are going to really be spent trying to answer the current questions and cover the current topics that a lot of parents and student athletes are dealing with. And in today's world, the two biggest topics that I find a lot of families discussing, one is, what in the world is this post-grad thing all about, this gap year? It has taken on a whole new meaning for a lot of families, way beyond just athletics. We talk about people that have taken gap years in the past, children of political figures, and trying to go to very high level academic schools, and trying to balance the weight of the academic expectations, the transcripts, the test scores. So, I am not certified and certainly not qualified other than to offer opinions, whereas Tamara, this is her business. And I think it's very important for parents to understand that. So, Tamara, I thought we would start, your daughter is looking for schools, and you as a family are trying to find what part of the country, the academic in the athletic balance, for your daughter. So, what has this process been like for you as a family? How did you start your process, and where are you at as in the process with regard to your family and your daughter?
Yeah. So my daughter is a junior and a pitcher in softball. And we started, let's see, I created a Twitter/X account for her sophomore year. And in retrospect, I should have done it freshman year. She went to her first college camp January of her sophomore year. Retrospect, I think I was a year too late. She's a very good pitcher, but we're in such a hotbed, right? And she's not a top 100 ranked kid. So those kids are all committing. And so it's been interesting, like myself as a parent, seeing this, her seeing it. And then I've had to have open dialogue and say, look, you have time, and we should be happy for them. And that's their journey. But like, let's get really clear about what matters to you. And so thankfully, we know the weather that she likes. We know that she wants a big college experience. She does, right or wrong, she doesn't want to just go somewhere just to say, I played. And that's such a personal choice. So I think getting clarity on that, like that tells my husband and me, okay, this is her year, and a year from now, when she's a senior, we'll know it's either going to happen or it's not. But the academic piece and the social piece and all those other important factors will have already been vetted, and they'll be aligned with the decision we make.
Well, I think it's important. This time of year, we feel like there's this timeline that is kind of creating this cloud over us and hanging. And, what we tend to have happen is we start to compare what other people are doing and who committed and who's going where, when in reality, as you just alluded to, you have to kind of have your own path, your own kind of plan. And whether you're starting as you are as juniors, or if you're in your senior fall and you're kind of now just getting started, what are some of the tips? Or how have you started to begin to look at different schools? Is it an academic focus and then bring in the athletics, or is it a combination of both?
We start with the academics because we know that's what will last. That's her foundation. So starting with thinking about what she's interested in, but not knowing for sure, we want to give her options, whether it's business or marketing or design. So making certain that the academic piece is going to be there. That's kind of the first wave. And then obviously we want to target schools that she would love to play softball for, knowing that they would be a reach, but hey, we're going to go for it. And then geographically knowing that they are in the Southeast, which she prefers. So pretty much in that order. It's a personal decision though, because some kids will say, I want to play. I don't care if it's D1, 2, or 3. I don't care the size. I don't care where. Such a personal decision. Nobody can tell you what that should be. You have to kind of think through that.
So I have a question here that just came in from a softball mom that wanted to ask you, do student athletes, or I guess she's asking specifically, does your daughter feel that this decision is a family decision, or is she charting and blazing her own path and her own course with regard to college? I think the root of the question is, do student athletes feel some sort of loyalty to stay close to home, or is this she's just an independent thinker and I want to go wherever I feel it's best for me?
We wanted to give her the liberty to make that decision. Hence the Boston trip in September. I mean, mama's getting on a plane every time if you're going up to Boston, right? So I wanted to give her permission within reason, to explore some great institutions. So I do think that the family needs to talk about it. And again, it's a personal decision. Like if we stay in state, and college is so ridiculously expensive these days. So those are factors too. I think it needs to be, what can the family do and what does the child want and where can we kind of align? And it's an ongoing discussion.
So I don't know if you, as a family, I just have a question here from Jeff down in Texas, and as we brought up there earlier about the post grad, this is something now that a lot of families are doing a deeper dive. And so Jeff's question from Texas is, when is the right time to start looking into a postgraduate school? And this is actually a great question because some want to reclassify,
Mhm.
in today's world. So I don't know. First and foremost, has your daughter ever given consideration to potentially doing a post grad year from an academic perspective? Whether it's in the Northeast or Mid Atlantic, has your daughter ever given consideration to a post grad year?
No. And I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert in an area that I'm not. Um, it's never even been a consideration. So I don't know. I've only ever thought of a PG year for boys, and I don't mean to like profile, but that's my only experience with it, you know?
It's actually huge. All sports, softball, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, football, etc. But the answer to the question from my perspective is, my sons both attended a public school, Auburn, Massachusetts, Auburn High School, and my son's completion of my sophomore year, he was approached by schools within the ISL and the NEPSAC, which schools that have been around for 2.5 centuries. In his particular case, Milton Academy, Brooks, and Lawrence Academy. Ultimately chose Lawrence Academy. I really feel it's really based on the student athlete as an individual and in the family. In my case, as my family, with regard to my sons, my ex-wife at the time, we were really looking to ensure that, at least for our youngest son, Tyler, that we would be looking to trade the athletic ability for academic strength and academic excellence. And those schools, year after year, they literally are dealing with students that are going into NESCAT, Patriot League, military academies, Ivy League, etc., Duke, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Tulane. And so in today's world, it's becoming a much more recognized kind of experienced and opportunity. It's really very exclusive and also elusive at the same time. And it does take some preparation. You do really have to take some time to do the online virtual tours. But I will tell you, both boys and girls sports, also theater, music, very competitive here in Massachusetts. We have the Berkeley School of Music,
Mhm.
which is an extremely, elite
Mhm.
musical university. And so those types of, attributes, those schools really seek out, and they are always adding for sophomore year, junior class, senior class, and in some cases, postgraduate. This is not a new term. So,
Mhm.
Jeff and parents, this is a hot button, I guess. I'm getting a lot of questions about it. It's really a family based decision. If academics, for instance, I spent a good portion of the day speaking with student athletes and families that I helped over 10 years ago. And, these athletes are now, they've received their masters from Northwestern. They were undergrad at University, Illinois, Chicago. They did a year at the Salisbury School, and now they work within private equity and things of that nature. And they look back and talk about the network, not only of the faculty, but their student, their friends, their peers. So, postgraduate is definitely something that is not athletic centric. In fact, I will tell you that it's the exact opposite. It's really for families that have a strong desire for balance within your college experience as a whole. Another mother from a softball perspective, and again, I want to make sure, you know, Tamara's daughter plays softball. Her son is a baseball player. Her husband played baseball at Wake Forest. Tamara was a field hockey player, and so all sports. I don't want to just be particularly
Yeah.
zoned in on baseball and field hockey, but a parent has asked, does your summer program, Tamara, this for you, does your summer program work or help with regard to college placement? The mom is asking if the summer coaches or the high school coaches are helping you or assisting you with regard to college placement.
Yep. So the travel, our club team, yes. Because at Gabby's age and as a sophomore, you get that exposure with the college coaches who come to the different showcases. So number one, you want to be on a travel team led by coaches who understand how the system works. And obviously that bleeds into the end of the school year and then the summer. My daughter does not play high school only because she goes to a small school and they don't have a team. But if she did, and I know plenty of others around, yes, you're wanting to lean on coaches who have connections and really just find a few people you trust who understand how it works.
I guess we're hitting the nerves of moms out there. Another question for you, Tamara, and that is, does your daughter feel the stress of trying to live up to academic expectations? She puts expectations, so I'm going to assume that's either A, athletic, or B, academic. But does your daughter feel, or do you feel that you interact in your line of work, with regard to trying to live up to the expectations that parents may have for their children?
So I think that we as parents are all, myself included, susceptible to falling into that, where we want to push and we want them to strive and achieve. I've definitely made my mistakes with both of my kids, but I've also been very quick to apologize and reassure both of them, like, this is your process. This is your journey. And I don't pull any punches. So for example, I was a very good student and I worked really hard, but I wasn't a brainiac. I didn't have test scores off the charts. So I say to my kids, as does my husband, like, my sport opened a door for me. It gave me recruiting trips, like to Dartmouth and to Penn and to different places that if it were just grades, I was a very good student, but like I wasn't top in my class. So I try to let my kids lead with what I want them to work hard, but I also want them to enjoy their process. So I try not to push or set an expectation that is for me or that is unrealistic.
Well, obviously, people have been waiting to talk to you. Again, I want to remind everyone, when we talk to Tamara, she joins us twice a month, but her company is elitemindsetdevelopment.com.
Mhm.
And so, all of these great questions, she's accessible via Twitter. We put her, I'll have all her information in the description, but I strongly encourage you, because Tamara is very accessible. She works with a lot of student athletes. I'll send some to her when asked by parents, but I want you to be completely aware that and we'll have a link to her website, but again, it's elitemindsetdevelopment.com, and you can talk to her any day that she's available during the week. I don't want you to think it's an exclusive here, just on our YouTube channel. Another parent is asking about trying to live up to the social media peer pressure and the expectations as an athlete. And I know that you understand this. And while I always try to explain to athletes that being the best that you're capable and controlling your attitude, effort, and energy is really all that you can handle, at this stage in their athletic career, especially as you're a junior or a senior, what if college doesn't work out? In other words, how do you manage that from a parent perspective? Let's say your student athlete really has a passion to play at the collegiate level, but let's say it doesn't work out for whatever reason. How do you manage that as a parent, potentially? The disappointment or the realization that maybe high school athletics is kind of the end of the line.
Yeah. I think about that because we may face that too. And I don't want us to think that we can somehow like eliminate that disappointment. I think it's really important to continue to have conversations about enjoying this journey, being very clear on what the end goal is, what we're striving for, but also continuing to reinforce other parts of the kid's life. And I say this knowing that in the junior year or the beginning of senior year, the sport is almost like a job because they have to work so much. So I'm not unrealistic about that, but I think it's important for us as parents to continue to hug them, tell them no matter what happens, you are going to be good. You are a great player, but you're also more than a player. And the reality is, if it doesn't happen, like if it doesn't happen for my daughter, it's going to be hard. It's going to be sad. There's going to be a chapter of our life that ends. And I'm not going to pretend that that's an easy process, but this is her choice. And I'm going to choose to just be grateful that it happened, right? And just know that I will get through, the closing of the chapter. I don't know how else to say it. I think it's a process, right?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I always, when I'm interacting with parents, I always try to get them to understand, the high school experience is a extracurricular activity. And so I always try to get parents to understand, okay, I get it. You have a very competitive high school. They're in a 6A, or here in Massachusetts, Division I type of conference, uber competitive, but that doesn't necessarily mean a guarantee of any type of opportunities or successes at the collegiate level. The collegiate level, it's really a privilege. It is an opportunity, but those coaches at that level, they are compensated. They are not just providing an extracurricular activity. This is something that, alumni and being competitive within a college conference is meaningful, and they are compensated to be competitive. And so college athletics, really doesn't matter what level or division. There's no such thing as just a go have fun and play. It's very competitive. And you're talking about limited roster spots. So if we have 400,000 or 500,000 student athletes playing softball in in US, or baseball, you're only going to have 10% of that playing in college. And in some levels, with regard to Title IX, they don't have all the sports. And so it's really important for parents and athletes to prepare for the business side of athletics, and do you interact with families that way to get them to understand that, that fork in the road, the minute you graduate high school, you're going to compete, in all facets at the college level, academically, socially, culturally, and obviously athletically, but nothing is guaranteed. Everything is earned on a daily, weekly basis, and you have to prepare for that environment where that structure and that time management component to your day, it is not your own. You are literally at the mercy of your college program. Do you ever talk to families or athletes about that separation of the social kind of event in high school, whereas in college, as you are well aware of, both you and your husband, it is a business. You are up when they tell you to get up. You are practicing, playing, and you are taking your schedules, for the most part, as they are laid out to you by your academic advisors.
Yes, it's a conversation that I have and I continue to have. I have it with my kids. I have it with other kids who are in high school who are looking to make sure that they understand. There was a college coach who said it so perfectly at a camp. It was basically, hey, before you think you want to play in college, whatever the sport is, understand your priorities. Number 1 is class. Number 2 is your sport. Number 3 is to sleep. And if you're lucky, maybe number 4, you can get a little social time in. But between your classes and your sport, we've got you locked up. You're not even going to be able to sleep as much as you want. So And I know how much different it is. I remember how it was when I was there, and I thrived on it and I loved it, but I know it's 10x that now. So I don't even pretend to understand the intensity of it. You know, like you're owned. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to schools, but like you're there to do a job, and you better be ready to handle it, and better be ready to know with the portal and everything, like you have to continue to earn your spot. And that's
So
just a mindset.
we have Coach Reno, who is a Division II All-American. You have to be prepared to have your day structured for you. So in other words, you do not structure or control your day-to-day activities. They are controlled for you, not by you. And I think it's important for, student athletes need to have this kind of mental mindset of the sooner you learn the discipline of time management, the better your experience will be. And I want to touch on something you just brought up, because I don't think enough families unilaterally, all sports, are really paying attention to the changes that are going on within college athletics. And, and you're dealing with softball. I had a family that was a field hockey player. My former next door neighbor was a field hockey All-American, and she was talking to me about her sport. These new changes that are coming forward in the NCAA, they are not just football or basketball or baseball specific. They are athletic department wide. Schools are making decisions over what sports they're going to continue to have. There are massive Title IX considerations. And all of these college coaches, they do not want restrictions. As much as we're being pro-student athlete, a lot of these coaches are saying, we just have fought for years and decades to have more opportunities for student athletes, not less. And while we want and encourage our scholarship growth, we don't want to do that at the expense of limiting our opportunities for potential student athletes. So parents, you really need to be Googling, the NCAA upcoming legislation. You need to, former Governor Baker is now the head of the NCAA, but you really need to stay up to speed on that. And I'm talking about all levels of college athletics. NCAA Divisions 1, 2, and 3. NAIA schools are absolutely bursting at the seams. And these changes are not sport centric. They are literally really changing the athletic landscape across all of college athletics. And the emphasis now is more, it's not so much an antitrust issue as much as it is making sure that student athletes are compensated both with regard to academic scholarship, also some time allotment, as Tamara was just alluding to, having some mental health time to rest and recover. There's a lot of changes that will affect student athletes from the class of 2025 and beyond. I encourage you to do some homework on that while you're looking at schools. I do have another question for you, Tamara. And does your husband and do you as a couple feel that your athletic experiences in any way help your children as far as their selection process? Meaning, your Division I former both Division I athletes, ACC athletes. Is there some sort of a trying to keep up with mom and dad with regard to your children, as far as this is again a softball question, but do your children feel like we have to be Division I athletes because mom and dad were Division I athletes?
I sure hope not. Scott and I have said to them consistently, it is like an apples to watermelon comparison. So when you start to think about that, understand that we're not placing that expectation on you. And it was such a different time that, I mean, the process, everything has changed and it's more competitive. So if they do feel any of that, they hide it. And I'm pretty good at reading them. I think we've hammered that point home that like, it's so different. And we really just want you to be happy. We want you to want this, whatever this is, because we can't drive it for you.
I had an interesting conversation with a former student athlete that I happen to coach, and I know the boys, some of the boys, some of the men that I had the opportunity to coach have now gone into coaching. But one of the topics that we discussed, and I would love to hear your perspective of it, do you feel that sports has changed for the athletes? Meaning, I know I did when dinosaurs roamed the earth. The boys, the men that played for me, it was a sport, it was a game, it was something that they truly had a passion for. Do you feel like because of the advancement with regard to summer travel sports that these children or adult teenagers, older teenagers, feel like it's a job for them as opposed to just a game, and they have that passion and that enjoyment for the sport?
I do absolutely think that that feeling of pressure and expectation, and that it is like this chore or responsibility, hits them younger, and they're hearing that message maybe even unintentionally, but by the virtue of getting on your phone and seeing like people posting their workouts, right? Because they want visibility. And um I think that in and of itself like creates this pressure and expectation that like I always have to be doing something. And so I imagine how could the love be as pure as it was for us, because we truly were like three sport athletes, and like when we put it down, we put it down, and we could. And I just think to find a kid like that today is really rare. And I don't blame, I don't point fingers. It's where we are.
But you bring up an interesting point. We were able to put something down. Again, not to exhaust this topic, but a lot of the elite athletes that I was able and blessed to be able to coach were exactly that. They were elite athletes. They played football, they played basketball, and then when it was baseball season, we don't have that anymore because for some reason, and I think the parent that was asking about, the pressure to, it's almost like a job. I think as a social media, when we go online, we look at these guys and they're training all year round and it's one sport and they have a personal trainer, they have somebody doing instruction with them, they have a nutritionist, and it's all one sport emphasis, and there's really no versatility. And I will tell you that there's two things that I think we as parents and mentors need to make sure we get across to younger student athletes. And one is it's okay to have fun. Like you do not have to be game face serious 24/7, 365. It's okay to go out and play, whether it's wiffle ball or soccer balls against the wall or pick up basketball. I've said this a zillion times. When I was a kid, pond hockey, Bobby Orr, all the things that create, well, they help you with creativity. Derek Jeter making a play in the hole. It's because he was playing in the pickup, at a sand lot or something. And I don't think we do enough of that. And I think we talk so much about rigid travel ball lessons, all this strength training. We lose sight of the fact that your daughter loves softball, but she also might like to play, pick up basketball every now and then. So, when you're going through this college process, it's important not to lose sight. And this is Tamara's line. This is certainly not my line. But without grit, you can't have any type of passion without that foundational piece of really enjoying it at some level what you're doing. And so it's okay to put it down, walk away for a day, a week, a month. You're not going to lose or give way to anybody. And I think it's important for parents to understand you're not losing ground. Your athletes are not losing ground when they're not playing a sport or practicing a sport all year round. It's okay to put it down. And do you ever work with any, whether it's baseball or softball or field hockey, where they feel the need to keep up with, the other athlete that might be better? So therefore, I got to keep grinding. I got to keep working. And they just kind of overwork themselves without understanding that.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a conversation I have with almost every child I work with. And that is the need for balance. I do have most of the kids I work with, most of them I say are at a point where they're specializing now. But I do.
At what age? What age do you do that?
So I would say sophomore year.
Okay.
But I do have a handful, whether it's middle school or high school. I do have a handful who will play a second sport, and like in their mind, like my daughter, lacrosse is her second sport. We don't play travel/club because we don't we don't have time for it. But it's important to me that she does something else. So yes, I am always preaching balance, and I'm trying to help families and athletes understand you hit a tipping point where less is more, right? And it's like you had Tim Corbin on September, I think it was September 11th. I finally listened to it last week, but he preaches a wonderful message. He's like, if I have a guy who's played football or he's played basketball and he's used to like hitting big free throws, like under pressure with the gym packed, he's going to be my guy, who I know he can handle the pressure in a tight game on the bump. And like, there's just something to, there's just so much value in learning how to just compete and have fun and create these memories, and like putting it down makes you hungry for it again. That's what you want.
I agree. 1,000%. And I have another question here for you specifically, where they want to know, after a heated competitive event, win or lose, how should parents approach, the child? Do they let them talk first? Do you engage in conversation? How do you feel? A really exhausting, physically, mentally draining game. How do you as a parent approach your child, your student athlete, after that big game?
So I've done it the wrong way a ton of times. So I can say I can say with conviction that the ideal way is you let the child bring it up, and you assume the child's probably not going to want to, and that's okay. Like, for example, if it's a long, exhausting game, win or lose, they're wiped. So I might stop and get him like ice cream on the way home, or just get something for myself and like, hey buddy, you need something. I'm not babying or coddling him, but like the game ended, he's exhausted, and I have to be very intentional about, I need him to know that I'm good. Even if he just played the worst game of his life, like I still love him the same. I might have to take a few breaths and get a grip with myself before I get in the car with him. But when I see him and I get in the car, my arms around him and we're good. And then when he wants to talk about stuff, I let him bring it up. And usually it's to my husband. Like, he knows that I played a sport, but he just doesn't like for mom to really say much. And that's okay.
Well, I want parents to understand, as we've all made mistakes, and there's no such thing as a perfect way to handle every situation. And so, whether it's with Tamara or somebody like a Coach Corbin, myself, I say it to my sons all the time. I made a boatload of mistakes. Don't make the mistakes that I made, and so we try to add, an opportunity for parents to hear and learn, and make suggestions and provide options for you as parents, to make sure that when you're dealing particularly with high school, trying to get into the high levels of college, athletics create a pressure cooker in the mind. And a lot of student athletes need that time to decompress, and it's okay to give them space and let them broach topics when the time is right for them. And I appreciate that question.
Me too.
I have another question. Okay, and I'm going to paraphrase, and this is from somebody that I know, again, down in Texas. And it's about the college decision as far as Division III versus JUCO, and this is a unique question, and I want to make sure this is something that a lot of parents have on their mind. and in no way is junior college equivalent or better or worse than Division III. They're two separate animals. And in today's world of the portal, yes, there are lots of Division III athletes, not all, that do go from Division III to Division II or Division I. Division III tends to be, especially in the Northeast, more academically balanced. Division III is a true college student athlete experience. It's a student athlete. It's not an athlete student. JUCO has become extremely, extremely competitive. I must emphasize junior college is in no way, shape, or form a step up from high school. In fact, it is probably equivalent to, at minimum, Division II NCAA, and in some cases, the same as Division I athletics. There could be an academic issue. There could be just a quality of play. Division II in the Sunshine Conference in Florida is a very strong conference. So I want parents to understand, when you're looking, you shouldn't just be Division I focused. It should be, what is the best fit for your student athlete with regard to A, geographics, B, academics. So if your son or daughter was injured and could never participate in a sport, would they be happy geographically, academically, culturally, with regard to the campus, if they were going to spend 4 to 5 years there? And then, oh, by the way, the athletics will then play a role. But you don't have to worry about conference. You don't have to worry about strength of schedule. Those things are going to change year to year. And I think, if we're talking baseball, I don't know softball. I certainly don't know field hockey. But with regard to baseball, the world has now become, if you are good, if you have ability, wherever you start, if you have skill, coaches will find you during the summer and you will get opportunities, whether that's at a different college or professional. So parents, do not base college decisions on athletic conferences, baseball coaches, baseball schedules, etc. You need to really make that kind of the end of it and make sure that the geographics. Listen, Tamara was just talking about being in Boston in September. Her daughter thought it was cold. Okay, got to cross that right off the list. We move. It's geographics, right? It's geographics. If she would have said, I love it here, okay, it opens up the geographics. But, you're going to deal with that, whether it's girls' sports or boys' sports, whatever. Geographics will play a role. And then the next thing is academics. How are the academics? The strength of this degree, whether you use U.S. News and World's report, however you base that. Now, I want to make sure, this is a topic that I know a few families ask me about, and maybe, Tamara, this is something that we can discuss and close out our conversation. But let's talk about affordability for a second. The college student loans, huge hot topic, hot topic. If I had it to do all over again as a coach, I truly had a great experience with my players that I was able to coach. But when I look back on, and our school doesn't even exist anymore. And so when I look back on the cost that the kids had to pay in order to attend college, they are now still paying, and they're in their 10th year after college. So parents, affordability, there is no such thing as, I'm going to go there because my son can play baseball. It's a great school, but oh, by the way, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars, or it's going to cost my student athlete X amount of dollars in student loans. That has to be a key component to your decision-making process. And that is why junior college is a good opportunity, because it's affordable. Your cost per hour or per credit is affordable. So is that a factor for you as a family, Tamara, with regard to the college selection?
Absolutely.
Talk about, because you're living and going through that.
Yes. So 100%. I mean, there are schools that we won't even consider, because I personally think we've just completely over-rotated on the cost of a college education. So, not judging anybody who
Right.
that's fine. But my personal decision is I am unwilling to go beyond a certain point. And so with that, that adjusts the scope of where I look. Yes, I look in state for my kids. And we have great options here, but then it does, dictate where else I'm going to consider, because you do have to think about that long term. Like, what if you make a decision for a school just based on the conference or the schedule or the coach? Like, the coach could be gone.
Right. And
It's just like, it's devastating to me to think
right.
about that.
And I think it's important, and I want parents to understand, this process internally, it will drive you cuckoo, because we all as parents want our children to be in a great environment and a great opportunity. But we really have to think about, geographics, but the costs involving not only the school or the university, but the ancillary costs. For instance, flights. If you go away for school and you need to buy flights on a regular basis, then you got to talk about, are they going to live on campus, off campus, food programs, so there's a lot of variables that nobody talks about or discusses. We all want to be with a recruiting service and they get us into this school, and then, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you $45,000 a year times 4. So you really want to start to look at all of your options right out of the gate. Academic merit money, cost per credit hour. Do I want to go someplace and maybe affordable for my first 2 years and then look to transfer out if I do believe in my skill set? All of these things are on the table. And I do have one last question for you, Tamara, and that is, at what age do you begin to work with student athletes? And do you work with, obviously, I know the answer here, boys and girls in all sports?
Typically, the youngest is 12. And I will say that for middle school kids, the relationship and the coaching can be very successful if the child is, I would say, like, maybe a little bit more emotionally mature, right? It's not something that like mom and dad are just signing him or her up for and they're kicking and screaming going to it. That's not good for anybody. But yes, I actually, when I look at my students, athletes, it's about 50-50 male, female, and it's virtually all sports. And then a lot of my kids, it's through Zoom because they're out of the state.
Well, I want to let parents know that, again, we're going to do this twice a month. Tamara and I, again, I want to reemphasize her background is as a Division I athlete. Her and her husband were both Division I athletes in the ACC, pretty much Tobacco Road, Wake Forest, and Duke. They now live in a very competitive environment within the South. So she brings a lot of perspective that I feel is appropriate and applicable to today's families and student athletes. And I think it's great for parents to be able to have access to Tamara. But again, Elite, you give all your information, Tamara. Tell people how they can reach you.
Sure. Thanks, Coach. It's elitemindsetdevelopment.com. And that's my handle for Facebook and Instagram. And then I'm on Twitter/X, and it's just my name. And I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I think I've had enough experience to have made the mistakes. And I think when we're overwhelmed by making decisions, the simpler we can make it, and understanding long-term, what are we trying to accomplish? And then let's back into that. Sometimes I know that sounds very easy, but these are exhausting and emotionally difficult processes for all of us. And so we can't lose sight of the fact that, like, my daughter's a junior. I said to my husband, well, we've got one more fall break with her, and then she flies the nest. So trying to remember that stuff helps us hopefully to make those great decisions with them.
Well, I encourage parents, if you want to have and get some answers, Tamara is a tremendous resource. I want to remind people, the Baseball Blue Book app, softball, baseball, everything and anything to do with baseball and softball, it's in the book, from camps to coaches to instruction. Tamara will be in there. You can link all your social media accounts. You can interact with college coaches. You can upload your video. But I encourage families, parents, athletes, go ahead and create a profile for yourself. It's free within the Blue Book, and coaches do interact with athletes, and we go ahead and promote them on social media. Want to let everybody know that next Tuesday, we'll be talking to Nate Bell, academic advisor at Vanderbilt University. He works with a few different athletic teams, particularly the baseball team. But this is where we're going to begin to do a deeper dive. We're going to talk to Nate, get an understanding of how they schedule classes, the academic involvement in proctoring tests when teams are on the road. Going to give you an inside look at the academic component to being a college student athlete. And then that week following, we're going to talk to an admissions counselor and financial aid counselor at the University of Tennessee. So we're going to really begin to do some deeper dives here. And again, Tamara will be with us twice a month, every other Tuesday. And if you have your questions handy, you can either send them to me like you have been via Twitter DM, or you can share them with us here. And Tamara, I want to say thank you very much for your time. Best of luck with your college selection process with your family and your daughter specifically, and look forward to chatting again real soon.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, guys. Again, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, the like button. Follow us both on social media, on Twitter. And I appreciate you taking the time and all of your great questions. Have a great week in all of your athletics and academic endeavors. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.